my mom and dad down in South Carolina.
Who are you guys?
I'm Amy.
I'm Courtney.
Yep. And I'm passing the phone over to you guys.
Yeah.
And do your thing. You got to change it so you got it for me. Okay, this is Trish. I'm the purple painted lady. I want to thank everybody who tuned in on Wednesday. We had a very lengthy tutorial, but the focus of that tutorial was not going to be a 2-minute quick showing you how to get paint on a cabinet. Can you lower that even more for me? I wanted to actually go through a lot of the basics, and that was the intent of that other video. Today, what I will say is, if you are just tuning in for the first time on January 10th, which was my daughter's birthday, it was an hour-long video. It was lengthy, but we went over what brushes to use, why, the prep, the cleaning, and we talked about the architecture of a cabinet, and then we actually showed you how we would initially start applying paint. Anyway, so now we have a cabinet that only has one coat on it, and we are going to paint that. If it broke, set it behind the counter, please. Okay. Where am I going? Let me get my water. Okay, so what I want to talk about is the fact that once you have a foundation of paint, we talked about the fact like a skim coat. I have one coat of old white chalk paint on this cabinet door. And
I'm just going to move over here so you can get a better idea of the color.
Yeah. And was this the one we did this morning?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just, Amy, it might be hard for you to pick up, but I think we actually applied a little bit too much paint right there, and it was a little heavy. So I'm just going to lightly sand out that. Actually, I think it's a little crevice on this cabinet. So, so this is one quick coat. We had a magazine come in and do a photo shoot with us. So we just wanted to go through the steps. So one quick application of old white. There is a difference of bleed through versus your brush stroke leaving a void. Obviously, you see some darker colors here. That's just where the paint isn't really concentrated. We're going to clean that up on the second coat. And we talked about adding water, a little bit of water to our paint in order to make it a little bit more fluid and thinner. And I'm going to do that because when I drag my paint over this first coat, there's going to be more resistance. So I just like to keep a water bottle. I love paper plates. I use them all the time. I'm just going to put a little bit of water. You see how little? It's very little, just a couple droplets there. And I like to do that just to moisten my brush because I think the paint will flow a little better. There's all different techniques. Some people will actually pour some paint in a little plastic container, add a little water to that just to make it more fluid. Do you have to do that? Absolutely not. What I want you to do is when you start painting, if you feel comfortable with how the paint flows from your brush, just leave it as is. If you feel like it's a little too heavy or thick for you, then maybe get a little water on your brush, grab some paint, or mix water directly into your paint. So,
but not in the can.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I don't particularly advocate for putting water directly in the can because tap water especially has different bacteria and the paint has microbes in it. And think about like yeast in bread. That bacteria can start to play with the microbes. And sometimes you don't want to add too much water and thin it to the point that you have no return except to buy more paint, especially if you don't need any more paint. And secondly, bacteria can actually then make the paint smell funny. And is it terrible? No, but you don't want that to happen. So on Wednesday, January 10th, we talked about the fact that we always like to paint with the grain of the wood. So on this particular cabinet, it has rails that run horizontal. And then there are stiles on both sides of the door because there is a raised panel here. And all I'm doing is painting with the grain. So I just kind of squeegee my brush in. I'm not going to go through the whole thing about why this is my favorite brush. Tune in to January 10th. This is a bit of a longer cabinet. So I'm just kind of using it on a Lazy Susan that's flipped over upside down, so the smaller portion is what I have my cabinet on. Just lets me expedite the process of moving around versus trying to walk around a table. If you start to paint and you feel like you don't have enough paint on your brush, just grab some more. So I painted those 2 rails, and now I'm going to come back and I'm going to paint the vertical stiles, and I'm going to take this off because I don't have my paint apron on, and I'd rather not get paint on that sweater. Shimmy my brush into the corners. I like to say oftentimes, depending on the person, that when you're painting with a white, it's usually 2.5 coats. The half coat meaning you might have to do a quick, sort of easy, quick 3rd coat, and basically the 3rd coat is to just uniform everything. On Wednesday, I talked about the fact that some people might put 1 coat of paint on their cabinets and love them, and they don't need to do anything else. It's really a personal choice. So you don't have to, do 2 coats. You don't have to do 3 coats. It's really what you like. Anything else we should be saying?
No, I think you got it. Anything you can think of, Court?
Do we have anybody tuning in?
We have a couple likes. I haven't seen any comments.
Okay, well, if you're out there and you've painted your kitchens, we'd love to hear from you.
Did you tell them about the heating up and cooling down the cabinets cause paint cracks?
I talked about that on Wednesday.
Oh, it's very true.
That Wednesday, last Wednesday, we talked about This Old House magazine, and they had an article about when you have painted cabinets, something that you should be concerned or aware about, or I guess aware of, is that if you get really a heavy amount of paint in between where your rails and your stiles meet up, that in the summer when it is more humid and in the winter when it's drier, they expand and contract. I definitely need some more water. And that having, making sure that you're aware that you just don't cake a lot of paint into those little areas. Okay? I'm kind of just coming at this real quick to get this on here, but a lot of times what I'll do is I will take my paint, put it more in the middle, and then I'll pull it back and forth. But before I move on, I'm just going to take my brush, do some long fluid brush strokes, because I want to help the paint be more level. And by doing like we like to say, laying of the paint, start from one end and then do one continuous stroke all the way to the other. Just so that way when it dries, it's going to have just more of a cohesive look to it versus doing all these short segments. And actually, if I can, I wonder if the camera picks up on it. Some of you guys, you send me pictures. Do you see those?
Not too well.
You always want to have one fluid end stroke from top to bottom. This is if you want more of a traditional finish. If you're looking to create texture, no problem. But personally, almost all of our customers want a smooth traditional finish. You can stay there, Amy. I'm going to come back. So, okay. Oh. Good enough? So, like I said, I like to add a little bit of water to the chalk paint on my second coat because it'll help the brush be more fluid and it'll allow the paint to flow. Otherwise, it sort of starts to you can feel the tension or the friction between your paintbrush and the already painted surface, and your brush drags a little. So, honestly, 2 coats, depending on what color, whites, oranges, sometimes you need a third. And then once it's dry, that would be a great time if you were going to distress it. Some people distress using sandpaper or a sanding pad once the paint is done before you wax. That's what I like to do. Some people do it after you wax. We'll do a whole video just on distressing, but what I wanted to do was actually get into the wax part, and I think that is something that a lot of the people on that video feed were asking about. This cabinet is still a little wet. It was painted with Paris Gray. I want to show waxing, and initially I thought, oh, I could just wax the old white cabinets, but when you put white paint on a white wall, and yes, you're probably here watching me versus a video, it's not as easy to perceive it through the camera. So we decided to take a cabinet door We put 2 coats of Paris gray on this door. It is still wet. Can you pick up on that?
You can see that, yep.
Okay, it's still wet in the center. So I'm not going to go near there. I'm just going to wax maybe around here and a little bit there. Although, I should have hit that with the blow dryer a little bit, really light. But anyways, so we're going to wax this particular cabinet. I am going to pass down to Courtney my brush and my paint, so that way we can take care of that. Like I said, I love paper plates. I should have had them in the picture on Wednesday of products you really should have in your painting toolbox, because painting, when you have plates, they're great for when you're in the middle of a project and you stop painting. Amy, can you just take a shot of that?
Sure.
It's a place for your paintbrush to rest. So that way it doesn't land on your work surface, because if you were sanding or you were cleaning, you don't want to get dust or dirt on your brush. I also don't like to leave it where the paint's going to get all over the side of the brush. So I love paper plates. They're very helpful, and they're also great for when you're going to wax. So,
Trish, I don't remember if we talked about this the other day, but we have someone asking, how do you fix issues with bleed through once the old white is waxed?
okay, so I'll talk about that right now, if that's okay. So we like to use a product called Zinsser Bullseye Shellac. Hey Luke, can you just go grab me the shellac back? Just one of the little cans. Bring it around. So shellac is a sealer. There's a difference between shellac and polyurethane. So when we tell somebody to use shellac, there is a specific reason for that, and that's because the properties of the product are different. So if you're getting bleed through, and you know what? Here's an example. Can you zoom in right here? That's bleed through. It's a little teeny dot. It's some wood tannin coming through, something. Typically, after you've painted, if you see that, that's the time to apply the shellac. If you've already applied wax, you're going to need to lift the wax off. Depending upon when the wax was applied, you could always paint another coat of old white over it. You cannot put the shellac directly over the wax. Some people have said, and I've heard this from other store owners, that if you apply wax over chalk paint, it will stop bleed through. So I've heard that. We tested it since Wednesday, and it didn't work for us. So what I would recommend to that person who's asking the question is to get some mineral spirits on a rag. You can lightly wipe your cabinet, like the same pressure you use to put skin moisturizer on. Lightly wipe your cabinet, and maybe even consider doing another coat of paint, just so that way the paint seals the wax. Give it a good, a while to dry, and then come back and use the Zinsser shellac directly over the paint. I like to do 2 thin uniform coats, and when I put shellac on, I don't apply it with a brush. I'll use a cotton lint-free rag, and I'll fold it up like a handkerchief, and I'll dip it into the shellac that I have stirred, not shaken. I'll dip my cotton rag in there, and I'll lightly wipe my surface, just like I'm kind of cleaning a table with the shellac. I'll let it dry. I'll come back. I'll do it a second time. Shellac dries very quickly, like in 5 minutes, but give it, 10, 15 minutes. Apply your second coat, and then wait maybe 20 minutes or a half hour, and then just take a fine grit sandpaper and just lightly sand in the direction you're going to be painting over the shellac. Once I've done that, I'll usually blow it off. Just give it a quick blow, or I use a rag, and then you're ready to paint again. You never want to have the shellac on really heavy or thick. It's not going to help you. It's actually going to hurt you. It can actually cause your paint to crackle. So make sure, we have an article on our website, The Purple Painted Lady, under tips for chalk paint, about when to apply shellac. I think it's the 2nd or 3rd post, and I strongly recommend you check it out. Okay, so chalk paint is a flat, matte, porous paint, and it is an exterior grade paint just the way it is without any top coat. You can use this outside. You can use chalk paint. We've used it to paint patio umbrellas. People have used this to stain concrete. People have painted vehicles. even though they would want to top coat it with an automotive kind of lacquer or some sort. But chalk paint has the ability to really adhere. However, it has a very chalkboard feel to it if you don't put some type of sealant. Also, especially in a kitchen, you know, if you have children and peanut butter and jelly on their fingers or grease, it's going to get absorbed into the chalk paint because it is a porous paint. And that's why Annie Sloan has her chalk paint wax, and it comes in different colors. Can you go grab the Abusan boards for me? Thanks, Courtney. And we are working with clear. Clear wax is sort of like a staple. Like you should have milk, flour, sugar, butter in your grocery list, you know, that kind of a staple. Clear wax is almost always used, even if you're choosing to use other colors that Annie Sloan has. So I thought, here's an example. These are just pieces of crown molding, our sample boards, showcasing the color Abusan blue, which is probably one of my favorite colors. In fact, I just painted a kitchen of ours in this color. And we did it in Abusan blue, and we ended up using black wax. But this shows Abusan blue with clear wax. I'm going to set these down if that's okay. So this portion of the sample board is Abusan blue with clear wax. You might want to watch your shadow. Then on the top of that sample board is Abusan blue with clear wax over the whole board and then dark wax. Okay. And then we have Abusan blue with black wax, and we also have it with the white wax. So there's, like I said, 4 waxes. Oftentimes, especially over light colors, so like over old white or Paris gray, I would typically use clear wax first, wipe off my excess, and then if I was choosing to do a brown or a black, then I would apply it. Clear wax is usually applied first because it gives you the ability to manipulate the darker or tinted waxes, where if you apply them right over the porous chalk paint, you're not going to be able to rub and have it glide. It's going to be sort of a hard stop, and it just sometimes doesn't look as well. But then again, sometimes depending on the project, like with graphite, people often will use black wax directly over the graphite to make it look much more like a black, and that works out really well. So it's an artisan paint. They're artisan products. I encourage you to play and to try different techniques, because that's the only way you're going to truly know which one you like the best. So the reason I wanted to use the Paris gray dresser, color on this drawer, was because when you put clear wax over white, you really can't tell as well via this, little video. When you come to our store, I, or any of us here at the Purple Painted Lady, will go over sort of a little scenario of how to use the wax. One of the things that we will do, or often say to people, is take a little bit of the clear wax, which sort of has the texture or feeling of Crisco. Get a little bit of on your index finger. And if you've never waxed before, I feel that this is a really good way for you to understand what end result you're looking for. So take a little bit of the clear wax. You guys can come around if you want and watch. And I want you to rub it in a circle right on the chalk paint. You can probably see there's my excess wax. Feel free if you want. And I'm just going to take my rag. I'm just going to wipe off my excess. Are you able via the camera to pick up how the wax intensifies the color?
Yeah, you definitely
okay.
can.
By doing this little circle, I know it's silly, but hey, if you're at home and you've never done this before, and I'm telling you or someone's telling you, when you apply your wax, a light touch is fine and less is more. Sometimes if you haven't done this, you're not sure what the end result should look like, and you might have some voids. So this is the end result you're going for, okay? Any questions to that?
Not for that, no.
And this is like, there's no, I don't feel any residual there. It's not greasy. I can touch it. And this has been sitting out when we went to lunch, so let me just see something here. What's that? Okay, that sounds good. I'm just going to start fresh. So I like to use the back of the spoon, and you know why? Look, I never even have to touch the wax. It rolls right off the back of the spoon. If I went in and scooped it, then I'd have to go like this, and now I have wax on my finger. The less wax you have on your fingertips and your hands, the better, because when you're handling this, you don't want to be redepositing wax where you're wiping it off. So there are all different ways to apply wax. People come into the shop and they're like, do I really need to buy a wax brush? I already bought a paintbrush. Again, if you are going to be painting your kitchen, for under $300 for the most part, you can get your paint, your wax, and your tools. Why wouldn't you want to invest and do it right the first time? And there is a big difference in the outcome, and in the application of the paint and the application of the wax. So if you are going to be, like I said, doing your kitchen cabinets, a whole dining room suite, you can't replace the furniture or the cabinets for even a fraction. I mean, this is so inexpensive to change that out. So to change the look, I strongly recommend a wax brush. There are many on the market, and this is an Annie Sloan wax brush. What I love about Annie's wax brushes is the architecture and the design. This brush kills 2 birds, 10 birds with 1 stone. It doesn't matter if you're doing a picture frame. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a whole kitchen. It works great if I have to get into a bookshelf, because like in the corner, the back corners of the bookshelf, when they come to a 90-degree angle, this brush so easily gets right into there. Where some wax brushes have a flat tabletop design to them, and that is very difficult then to accommodate raised edges, raised panels, where this brush, it works no matter what my project is. So that's my commercial, my little PR on an Annie Sloan wax brush. If you choose not to get an Annie Sloan wax brush, I still think applying wax with the brush is the best way to apply it. So I've heard of some people trying to use old paintbrushes. Your results will not be the same. It's like buying a soda stream and making your own soda at home. It doesn't really taste the same, but it's soda. So the wax brush, I think, is definitely worth its investment. When you're going to apply wax, I like to just get some on the tip of my brush. You don't need it caked on. That's not how we want to apply it. The other thing I like to tell people is that when you start to apply the wax with the brush, think about the pressure or the amount of, just the amount of pressure you put when you're putting on lotion or suntan lotion or even moisturizer on your face. That's the type of pressure you're using to put the wax on. You shouldn't be breaking into a sweat. You shouldn't get any pains in your shoulder, and you shouldn't be getting any pains in your wrist. I like to hold my wax brush. I still have my cold. I like to hold my wax brush the same way I was suggesting to hold a paintbrush, almost like when you're holding a pencil. I let it lay in my hand, actually, and some people say it's like buttering toast. You can apply your wax. That looks dry to me now, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. Yep. Okay, you can apply your wax in a linear motion. You can apply your wax in a circular motion. You can apply it linear and circular. The most important thing here is that when you are applying your wax, remember how that little circle looked the first time that we showed you when I used my index finger? That's the result that you want when you are applying wax. You want it to be a uniform application. And I gotta tell you, this brush is like the bomb when it comes to waxing these little grooves. Because otherwise, if you were trying to do this with a blue Scott shop towel, pardon me, one, your hand will become very tired, but two, you won't get a uniform application. And the reason being is when you're holding a rag, you have a lot more pressure here than you do here. Okay? I'm just going to grab some Scott shop towels. Can you even see where the wax is?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I like to tell people to have 2 sets of rags. Have a removal rag, or a set that we like to call the removal rag. And then once you've gone through and lifted all of the excess off, I like to get a nice clean Scott shop towel and just go over the space one more time. Go over the area. Right now, it feels cool. I still feel a little drag here. And if I put my finger there, you can actually see a fingerprint. Like not a textured fingerprint, but almost like a little teeny moisture spot. So let me just grab a clean rag. So I'm just going to lay the wax, I guess you can say.
We have someone asking, how do you paint over these in 10 years if there's wax on them?
Well, the good news is if you choose to use chalk paint, you just paint right over the wax. Chalk paint is totally compatible with wax. Annie Sloan made it so it's totally harmonious together. If you're thinking in 10 years, you're like, oh, you know, I want to use this brand of paint, or I like this color. I did not wax from here up. I'm not sure if you can quite see that.
I don't think you can really pick up on that.
Okay, well, the one thing I want to say, I'm going to answer your question in just a second. This wax that I applied, I don't have any drag. I always flip my hand over because I do have some residual wax on my fingers. I can just take my hand and it's cool and my hand glides on the surface. If it feels waxy when you're doing it or you feel drag, you left too much wax on. So if you paint and wax your cabinets in 10 years or even sooner and you decide, you know, I really want to change the look, I want to change the color, what I would do is I would get some odorless mineral spirits, okay? It's the same advice I would give you if you asked me about cleaning the cabinets prior. I would take some of the mineral spirits, I would flip them over on a rag a couple times, and I would wipe the doors down. And the reason being is the mineral spirits cuts the wax, and it will actually lift the wax off. And you want to make sure if you're not using chalk paint by Annie Sloan, you're going to use latex paint, you need to remove the wax. And then once you've done that, you can give the cabinets a light sanding, you can prime them, and then you can paint them with the paint you choose. Remember, because with chalk paint, there's no sanding, stripping, or priming. So, you know, if you were going to change it, it'd be advantageous to stay within the Annie Sloan family of colors. What other questions? I'm going to say this, and if you do get a question, let me know. 2 coats of wax is plenty on cabinets. I personally, cabinet doors that you never even touch, you know those little ones sometimes over the refrigerator? I sometimes just do 1 coat of wax on those because nobody's even opening them. In fact, most people don't even know what's in those cabinets because they haven't opened them in like years. It's the truth. Like in my kitchen, I have little cabinets way, way up high, and I don't know what's in them because I have to get a stepladder in order to open them. So, wax is water resistant. It is a wonderful product in that, let's just say you have a vacuum cleaner with a rubber bumper that goes around the vacuum. And this is the side of maybe your peninsula, and you are running your vacuum through your kitchen. Maybe you have dogs and they shed, and they have black rubber bumper, like you know, on the bottom of a sneaker, the sole on a sneaker. You bump up against your cabinet and you leave that black smudge. I always like to leave a tin of clear wax with all our customers underneath their kitchen sink, because if you have anything major, you can clean wax using warm, soapy water. We like to refer customers to use Method. That's a gentle brand soap detergent. I recommend not to use any product that has a heavy degreaser in it. And the reason being for that is there is a binder in the wax, and you don't want to break it down. But the wax does cure and become very hard, and you can easily wash it. But if somebody was outside sitting on your asphalt driveway, maybe working on the lawnmower, and they come in the house and they decide it's lunchtime and they start touching your white cabinets and leave some of that black, I don't know what that is, could be almost like an oil, because your driveway, your asphalt has oil mixed in, but you have a little bit of that black on your cabinets. You could take a little bit of clear wax and just rub it over the spot, and it'll lift off whatever is on there. And that's because when you put fresh wax over previous wax, it reactivates that very top micro layer, and lifts off whatever's there. Doesn't hurt your cabinets whatsoever. Courtney, will you do me a huge favor? Will you go see if any of our sample boards with clear wax need a freshening up? You know what I mean, like the lighter colors? Any other questions?
You have lots of good questions.
Go for it. I'm
Okay.
ready.
So sometimes when
Can you
waxing,
talk a little louder, too?
Sure. Sometimes when waxing, I see streaks. Is that because it's not uniform?
That's a great question. So when people say, I see streaks in my wax, I ask them a couple questions. I say, when you're saying streaks, do you mean shiny and dull? Or is it because, hold on, let me find something here. Sometimes if you don't apply the wax in a uniform way, you're never going to pick this up. Remember before when I did that little circle? If you do, you can leave it there. Thanks. Let me just show something again. I'm going to tune in. I'm going to bring it if you want closer. So I'm going to set it down so I'm not in the light.
Okay.
So, I'm not in the shadow. So this is uniform wax. It's all over. If you put it on really light, can you see those little lines at all? Don't get too close. It might get blurry.
Well, your finger, yeah, there you go.
Can you see that?
I think so, yeah.
That's where, and you can stay right there, that's where some wax hit the tips of the brush strokes, but the wax didn't go all the way and penetrate and get sucked into the paint. Okay? So that's one reason someone might say they have streaks, and I'll tell them, go back and re-wax. And they do, and they're like, oh, it totally fixed it. Another reason you might say you have streakiness is, and this is more common when you're working over a darker color versus white, is that when people start to remove the wax, the goal is to remove it and it'll feel cool, a little moist, and your hand glides. Most people, well, I shouldn't say most people. Some people, when they're removing the wax, the amount of pressure or how long they continuously rub the wax start to buff the wax. And you see high and low shine. I don't know if that woman or that person who asked the question, if they're still on, maybe they could be more specific, because that would be helpful. And if you do have high and low, oftentimes another application of the wax, clear wax, over it, with being conscientious of how much pressure you are removing it or how long you are rubbing it, will definitely change the outcome. Once you have a coat of wax on, if you still have that streakiness, sometimes this is helpful. People who use graphite, which is sort of a dark slate color, want to grab that? The darker the color, the more, anything imperfection with your wax application, or if you didn't quite apply the paint correctly, darker colors seem to be like, I don't know.
They're less forgiving.
Yeah, absolutely. They're less forgiving. So with darker colors like graphite, and this has clear wax and then brown wax, the dark wax over it, sometimes people will say, I'm getting streakiness. I can see it shiny and dull in some areas. Well, once you have your wax on and you removed your excess, if that's happening to you, I will sometimes tell customers, not on your first application, but to add just a couple drops of mineral spirits, just a couple, to your wax, and it's going to thin it just a little. And some people, that makes a big difference because they have a hard time sometimes applying the wax straight as it is out of the tin. So they'll do that, they'll put the wax on, they'll be more conscientious in the pressure they're applying. 'Cause remember, it's like skin lotion. You're not trying to, exfoliate the paint. We're just putting the wax on and it's going to absorb into the paint. And I would say 9.9 times out of 10, that solves the problem or solves the issue. What other questions do you have?
I had read several reviews that the wax react poorly to cabinets near the stove and dishwasher because of heat, so I've been hesitant.
Yeah, okay. What's interesting is, and everybody's experience can be different. We are a contractor here in New York. We have 4 stores, and we paint cabinets in our community. And I think on the post from January 10th, we had multiple customers actually post photos of their kitchens and were praising the product. One person, and I apologize, I don't remember your name, but you wrote that you painted a kitchen for a family. They had 4 children and I think 2 dogs, and it was 3 years ago. And it might have been your kitchen, or maybe you painted it for somebody else, but you said it still looks wonderful. So I feel any paint product, an aftermarket application, you want to make sure you're using the best products. Of course, it's going to be a little different than if it was produced in the factory, but chalk paint and wax are extremely durable. And I often tell people, I often think about the fact that Annie's wax, one of the components in her chalk paint wax, and that can get confusing, it's wax for her paint, is carnauba. And carnauba has the tensile strength of concrete. It is very hard. We, the Purple Paint Lady, we're located in Western New York, and often people wax their cars. And one of the reasons we wax our cars is that it protects the paint of the car. And here it rains, it has sleet, we get snow, we put salt, the towns, the cities put salt on the roads to lower the freezing temperature, or is that right? To raise the melting point. Yeah, something like that. And so this salt spray gets on your car and the wax protects the paint. So wax is very, very durable. It's also water resistant. What else do you have?
I have oil-based painted cabinets and want to chalk paint. Is there any special thing I need to do besides clean them to repaint?
No, the chalk paint will go right over your oil-based cabinets. You're fine. The one caveat for using chalk paint is if you have cabinets that have thermofoil on them, and we have those at our Macedon store in the bathroom. They're like wood cabinets that almost had this sheet of like a plastic, and they heat it up and it sucks and molds it to the door. And like literally I was taking it off our cabinet. I'm pointing to Courtney, not that you can see that, but I was taking it off the doors at the Macedon store, and it pulls off almost like a sheet. It's almost like nail polish. You know, for the guys watching, sorry for this one, but it's almost like nail polish and you didn't have a good clean base or a prep, and the nail polish pulls right off your whole nail, almost like in one full sheet. They often say with thermofoil that you should heat them up and then remove the thermofoil. But otherwise, over oil-based paint, no problem at all. So.
Okay, so how about, do you wait between coats for waxing?
You know, Annie Sloan says only do 3 applications of anything in a day. So, for example, today, this has 2 coats of paint on it and 1 coat of wax. I personally wouldn't do another coat on this. And it comes down to, sorry for my lame examples, but if you go and get a pedicure, you can only have so many coats of polish on your toes, because they say it's okay to dry. But if you have, you know, 3 or 4 layers, it is dry, but you typically, if you put your socks and put your foot back in the boots, you're gonna get sort of a crease or some impressions. You don't wanna have too many applications of anything, because you really want them to set up and cure and become hard. So when it comes to wax, can you do 2 applications of wax in a day? Absolutely, no problem at all. Just make sure that before you put the second application on, that your hand glides. The other thing I want to mention about wax, especially darker colors, but even old white, when I immediately finish wiping off my excess wax and I use my finishing rag, good idea, when I use my finishing rag, if I come back and I take my fingers and I start touching it, it's not going to leave an impression or texture, but it almost leaves like a little faint ghost mark. By taking your lint rag, just wiping it, it goes away. But the point is, the wax is fresh, and you need to give it, I don't know, I like to say give it about an hour, because by then you can come back and handle it, and you don't see those, I don't know what it is, like a moisture mark or something. So.
Okay, so what are the blue towels you're using to wipe wax off?
Okay, so that's perfect. You know, we sell these, but you can get them at big box Walmart shops. You can get them at any of the auto parts stores, but you can get them from your local stockist or the Purple Painted Lady. And they're just Scott shop towels. They come in rolls, and then also, I don't know where it is, but we had a box, a cardboard box, I don't need it. They also come in boxes, almost like a Kleenex, where you pull it out. And I think there's 300 in a box. We sell them for $3 a roll, which is cheaper than paper towel. The thing that we like about these rags is that, oh, I ripped it, but that gives you an idea. It is a very tough material, and it's lint free. And I think that's really important because when you are working with wax, you don't want to leave any little fuzzy hairs in the wax, because then if it dries that way, those little hairs are in the wax. You can remove them if you moisten a rag with mineral spirits and you wipe over it, but you don't want to do that, so just do it right the first time. I did mention in my January 10th video, when it comes to these blue towels, there's 300. Don't be frugal. If it starts to break down and feel moist, toss it aside and get a new one. What else should we talk about? Should we do, I don't know. Should I wax some more? Any more questions?
Well, there's this isn't about wax, but can I use on high sheen white lacquer cabinets?
Yes, you might want to. You could lightly sort of scuff them up a little, just to give them a little bit of tooth. But on our website we have an article, a post on thepurplepaintedlady.com about painting laminate and Formica. And Formica is very smooth. Think about the kitchen tables from the 1960s, and we've painted all of that. So, yes, you can. Can I just also say this? When you're painting over a really smooth surface, I like to always thin my paint with a little water up to about 20%, and you're going to paint a uniform thin application and give it 24 hours. Don't come back and paint it before. Let that paint have time to really bear down and grip. And then the following day, you can paint a second coat. You can thin it if you want. You can paint right out of the quart of the paint. But by giving it a little bit of time for the chemistry in the product to really sort of do its thing, it's beneficial, especially over laminate, Formica, really shiny surfaces.
We've had a couple people, I know you already mentioned it, but they're asking about what color you used on that door there.
So the door I have in my hand is painted in a color called Paris Gray. And it is a really pretty, I would say, lighter shade of gray. It is a, some people are like, is it a warm color or a cool color? Paris Gray would be defined as a cool color. And if you have a home with a lot of blue in it, or you're putting this in a kitchen with a lot of blue in it, it could pick up a little bit of those blue tones. But Paris Gray is one of our top selling colors. I think it's a very popular, almost like a restoration hardware color. It goes, we sell quite a bit of Paris Gray. Yeah, it's a really pretty color. If you're looking for, we could have a whole nother video on colors and talk about them and actually answer questions on them. But on our shopping cart, shop.thepurplepaintedlady, every color has a description. The description is, there's two parts to it. It's canned, which means I get some of the verbiage from Annie Sloan herself in regarding how this should be marketed. And then we also add a couple sentences where all of us at the shop, how we would describe the color to a customer in the store. Because, again, some of her colors are called Chateau Gray, and it's not gray. I mean, there's a gray to it, but it's really more of like a mossy green. So it's helpful to always read the descriptions with the colors.
We have a lot of people saying they would love a color video, so that's something we should definitely.
Okay.
The other thing is people are asking about how to distress, which I know you mentioned we might do a video about that, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you what. What we're going to do, today's what? Thursday, Friday?
Friday.
Today's Friday. You work every day, you forget what day of the week it is. We are going to do 2 Facebook Live videos next week. Are you back to school?
Yeah.
Oh.
We do Monday. Every Monday.
Okay. We will do a Facebook Live video on Monday at noon Eastern Time. And we can, starting tomorrow on our Purple Painted Lady Facebook page, on Saturday, the 13th, which is my lucky number, we are going to have a post about how you could register to get a text message for when we go live. And that way it will alert you. If you want to join the Facebook Live, you can. If you don't, no big deal. And you don't need to sign up. This will always be available and free. But Facebook Live videos work out great because you can come back later in the day or at night. You can watch it, and if I'm talking too much for you, skip right through it until you see us actually doing something that appeals to you, okay? I'm trying to market this and share as much information I can with our customers, and if you are looking for just that 1-minute video, this may not be the right spot for you, okay? So next week we will do Facebook Live on distressing, no problem, and then we'll also do one on color. And we'll do a Facebook event alerting you, and you can actually go ahead and write your questions underneath the Facebook event ahead of time, so when we get to the video, we can give you some meat and potatoes, some substance that you're looking for. So, Luke, please don't knock that over. Let's see here. What other questions?
I think that covered a lot of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're good. So, happy Friday, everybody. Post your questions underneath this video, and we will answer them like we did on Wednesday. And we appreciate you. Go visit your local stockist. If you don't have one, obviously we're here for you.